Thrivesters, you're not going to believe what's about to happen. Here's what's about to happen. I have invited somebody onto the podcast who I knew 40 years ago, 40 years ago.
I think more.
More, definitely more. Oh, yeah. Well, we've known each other since we were little itty bitty kids. So Carla is joining the podcast. I'm going to have her introduce herself in a second. And I think it's really cool how we connected. So was it Facebook? Maybe
I think it was probably Facebook, and it was back when I was representing a jewelry line.
Stella and Dot. Oh, can I say
That's
that?
right. Of
Stella
course.
and Dot. So,
Absolutely.
oh my God. So we found each other on Facebook. Oh my God, I love what you're doing. Oh my God, I love what you're doing. Fast forward, Carla becomes a pivot point coach,
Purposeful pivot. Purposeful
purposeful
pivot
pivot, sorry,
coach. Hmm.
coach. And I said, you know what? I got to get her on this podcast because here, oh no, here's what would happen. You would send me a note and say, I love your content. And I would send her notes and say, I love your content. And I'm like, well, if we all love each other's content, let's get on the podcast and talk. So welcome. I'm going to use your married name, Carla Greengrass,
Yes,
to
ma'am.
the Thrive Hive.
Thank
Welcome.
you. I'm so happy to be here. There is such a wonderful symmetry in lives coming back together. And right, a couple of months ago, I think I sent you some grainy, like 8 millimeter film from what had to be my fifth birthday party.
5 years old, not fifth grade people, 5 years
5 years
old.
old. Yes, 5 years
Yeah,
old.
5 years old.
And here's what I want to say about that. As you know, here we are in our 50s, if I'm allowed to say that.
You
And
are,
yet,
yes.
right, there's when you look at little baby Nancy and Carla, the essence is still there. Like you can just see the little personality
Crazy.
and the spirit.
Mm-hmm.
And it
Mm-hmm.
warms my heart. I keep a picture of my little self over there just
Do
to
you really?
remind me. Yeah, there's a little picture of, I don't know.
Oh,
It
there
could
you
have
are.
been the same,
Yeah.
could have been the same age. I have the same haircut. Um,
I
but just
I
to
I
bring us back.
screenshotted it. I think I sent you a note that said I look like a dork or something like that. I don't know, it was something
Oh,
negative, I
so
remember.
sweet.
So welcome. So tell the Thrivesters a little bit about what you do, and then let's get into it because we have got really great stuff to talk about.
Yeah.
So what do you do exactly?
What do I do exactly?
Yeah.
So as someone who has, I always joke, who's been there, done that, navigated life's many unexpected changes, lived and done for others, led with the intention of supporting others. I've finally got to a point in my life where I realized I really needed to grab the pen back and start really taking ownership of my story, of my narrative. And now that's what I do for others, individuals who are navigating change, are trying to figure out what is their next chapter,
Hmm.
who do they want to be right now, and how do they want to live. I walk that path. I sometimes call myself a little Sherpa. I hold the
Love it.
light and hold their hand when they need it. And through mindset and very tactical skills and tools and strategy, we figure it out and we help them get there.
Love, love. Mostly women, only women, men too.
Uh, You know, uh, Mostly women. And I love working with men
Hmm.
because I think originally, especially when I was going through my coach training program, my biggest fear was being assigned a mentor, a peer coaching client who is a man. And of course, both of mine were. And so I sort of broke through that fear, and it's
Right.
actually an incredibly dynamic, it's just like a different dynamic. And so I welcome it, but I think, energy attracts like energy. So I do end up working with a lot of women.
I love it. It's interesting because as you were saying what you do, which is very similar to what I do, and by the way, Thrivesters. So it's funny because I've had other coaches on many times, many of whom are pretty much, we kind of do the same thing. We just do it very differently.
Mm.
I have always believed my whole life, this is 30 years in sales, there is enough for everybody to go around. Like the last thing I'm going to do is be competitive and be like, oh, well, she's a coach, you can't have, because there's enough. And
Yeah.
if someone resonates with you and your approach, great. I want them to work with you. Like it's really, it's just interesting. It's almost like in the schoolyard. Hmm.
Mhm. All comes back to the playground, right?
Yeah.
Playground dynamics.
I am going to reference our childhood quite a bit because I do want to ask you some questions, by the way, but
Yes.
I wanted to wait till we were on the podcast. So, so my point was, as you were saying what you do, I was thinking men are self-aware, yes. I don't know a lot of men who reach a point where they say, now what? I checked all the boxes. Now what? I'm not saying they don't. And this is common with retirement. I don't know if you have you read the book by Arthur Brooks, Strength to Strength?
No, but
It's
I've read
about
his articles in the Atlantic. I love the way he thinks.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's about retirement and how a lot of men in particular struggle with it because this is who they are, and then all of a sudden that's gone. And they don't necessarily like, I don't know, I just don't, they don't, I don't find as many men saying, I'm going to pause for a minute, think about who I want to be and think about how I want to live and think about this next chapter. They just don't. A,
Mm,
a lot of the men I know don't. You can
there's,
disagree with
it's
me if you want.
well, and I think it's like with everything, right? It depends on the person. I do think there are, and this goes back to identity too. There are societal constructs that if we choose to believe them, then it is hard to break free and lean into those insecurities
Right.
because I've always got to show up strong. I am the breadwinner. If I don't know what I'm doing or who I am, then I am weak. And so that's, I don't know that you would call that toxic masculinity. I just think that is right how we were raised, those,
Yep,
let's call them what they
for
are,
sure.
they're limiting beliefs.
Yep.
I do think it takes courage, a hefty lift and a lot of courage to admit. And I actually did have a introductory call, a discovery call with a gentleman who was unhappy with some choices that he had made. And there was that moment of, what do I really want to do? We didn't end up
Right.
moving forward working together. However, at least there was that
Yeah,
awareness
yeah,
that,
yeah,
you
yeah.
know what, I think I made the wrong choice. What do I
Interesting.
do now? Yeah.
Wow, that's pretty deep. That's pretty
Mm,
big.
mm,
Actually, so one of the reasons why I mentioned this because Danny, my husband, who you would love, by the way,
mm.
you would really love him. He grew up in Newton. We'll talk about that later. Anyway, you probably know his family. So he's retiring at the end of next year. And I'm like, honey, you're not just going to wake up and what are you going to do? He's like, I'll travel, I'll play golf, I'll read. And I'm like, you're going to read, you're going to travel and read. And so finally, I did a 17-page PowerPoint workshop deck for him. Okay, this is, and I made him sit down and do it. I made him sit down and I didn't make him, but I wore him down. And then I realized that, you know what? Like, he's just not wired like that. I'm
Mm,
like, oh my God, what am I going to do? I want to make sure that, I have a purpose and what's my purpose going to be and all these things. And he's like, yeah, I'm not really worried. I'll figure it out. He's just
mm.
not wired like that. It's not ego. It's not fear. It's just, he just doesn't think like that.
When you this when you look at his, like, the influencers in his world and the people that he saw,
Uh-huh.
is there similarities there? I mean, because right, we're
Oh,
we're always influenced by the people that
Oh
hold the
yeah,
most power in our life.
yeah. His dad retired and he's still with us. Hey Marshall, I don't think he listens to
Mm,
this podcast, but if he does,
knock on wood somewhere.
95 years old, plays like two or three rounds of golf every week.
Mm,
Like that's why that's his role model. He's like,
that's right.
what do you mean what I'm gonna do? I'm gonna do what my dad did.
Yeah.
So it's anyway, my point is I don't they're not drilling down on the nuts and bolts. But anyway, we went down a little rabbit hole there. So
More to
when I was
come.
talking to Carla about what she wanted to talk about, one of the things she mentioned was energy. And as you know, energy is our jam over here in the Thrive Hive. We have a finite amount of energy, and who gets access to it is our
Mm.
decision. So tell me about, I want to hear about this attitude assessment because the minute you said that, I lit up. So tell me about how you approach energy management, how it ties into your work, and why you came up with this attitude assessment or the ELI.
Yeah. So
A lot.
energy, and right, energy takes on so many different meanings. everything is energy, right? Around us, when we think about the law of attraction and, all sorts of quantum physics and whatnot, we know that everything is energy. Everything is resonating at every moment. The desk, us, like the lights. So there is, of course, physical energy, kinetic energy, and this is our thoughts as energy. I always like to joke, if you don't think your thoughts are energy, then maybe you've never had a teenager, your own, walk into a room with a face and a bust.
Oh,
Maybe,
that's
right? Or you're in a meeting and your manager walks in. That's when you know that thoughts are energy. You can
hmm.
feel them like coming off the body. And so when we think about our thoughts, our mindset as energy, and I love the way you talk about energy management, it's really the idea that in every moment we have the opportunity to decide how we want to perceive and then respond to the situation around us, right? We have what, like, I think I read a statistic, 30,000 thoughts coming through our brain on a normal day. Anywhere from, you can someone might want to Google this one, 30 to 60,000 thoughts a day coming through our brain. And obviously some of them, right, decisions that we need to make, thoughts that we're having, some of them are just in the subconscious, but others are just, going through our head. And some of those thoughts are supportive and others are not so supportive, right? The limiting beliefs, the assumptions, the interpretations that we make. And this can be discussed, but thoughts create feelings and feelings create action and actions define your reality, right? Without going too matrixy here,
Yep, yep,
every choice that we make creates our reality. And
yep.
so the Energy Leadership Index assessment, it's a proprietary assessment that was created by an organization called IPEC, which is the
Mhm,
organization that I became a certified coach through. And it
mhm.
is one of the only attitude assessments out there. And unlike Myers-Briggs or Enneagram or, Strength Finders, those are all personality assessments, and I love
Hmm.
them. Any Cosmo test or BuzzFeed quiz I could take, I would take it. And I think I was saying to you earlier that, at my age, I don't need to answer the questions anymore. I can pretty much just give me the answer key and I will circle which one I am, because I'm fairly certain I will know just by looking at the description
Yep.
which one I am, dare I say who
Mhm,
I am. And that's great, right? It gives you sort of the framework and understand how to work within your sort of default patterns. So that's personality. So what's so cool about an attitude assessment is that attitudes shift and change over time. Attitudes
mhm,
are connected to our current, and I want to say that again, our current belief system,
mhm,
are the current rules that we have been maybe living by. And that's what this assessment does. It uses data and actual like numbers to spit out a energy level, an energy interplay of how you are, how you show up. Let's just say that. I think that's the easiest way
mhm,
to say it. How you show up under normal circumstances, right? You're sort of everyday, like going about life. And then maybe more important, how do you respond or how do you show up under stress? Because stress is when all the little stress monsters come out.
mhm,
And
mhm,
when you're under stress, you can you can show up a lot of different ways, right? And the key, nothing is good or bad. I always like to remind my clients, anyone that's going through this assessment, there's no right or wrong, there's no good or bad energy level. This is all about setting a baseline of awareness of
mhm,
your, what I'll call your default settings. It's almost like your
mhm.
factory settings if you were like
Yep.
looking at a phone. And from there, from that space of awareness, you get to now choose. Okay, if I know that when I'm triggered by stress, I usually go straight to victim energy, right? Woe is me. Why is this happening to
Mhm,
me? Or maybe I go straight to, anger, right?
mhm,
I'm going to win here. And whoever's
mhm,
in front of me, I'm going to mow you down. If I know that that's my default and
mhm,
that's not necessarily getting me what I want, right? Thinking about how I want to live, how I want to be, then I now have a choice. And I keep that wonderful Viktor Frankl quote about, the space in between stimulus and response. And
Mm-hmm.
I'm paraphrasing, but that space is really where our freedom lies, and that's where our power lies. So it's all
Oh,
about the power of choice in how you perceive and respond to the world around you. And so it is a very unique. I think it was either Fortune or Forbes named it one of the top 10 assessments that executives should take because
cool.
it provides it shows you how you lead, right? You lead with your energy. So whether
Mm-hmm.
you're leading for yourself or leading within an
Mm-hmm.
organization, just starting with the awareness piece, but then understanding the other choices that you have and building in that space for choice.
That is extraordinarily cool. I want to go back to something you said, and I wrote it down because this is what popped into my head. So you were very clear. This is your current belief system, and that changes over time.
Mhm.
Um, so how do you help your clients, or how would somebody listening, if they know, okay, this is how I am based on my current belief system? How do we change our own? How do we change our own beliefs?
It's a great question.
Mm.
Sometimes we don't even know that we have them. They're just kind of operating in the background. Um,
Yeah.
whether it is, I am way too old to start something new. How am I
Hmm.
going to restart? Um, if and this is a big one that I struggled with, which actually set me off on this whole path is who am I if I don't have this title?
Oh.
I mean, how is, my value, my worth is tied to my income, my
Mm-hmm.
shiny corner office, my
That's
productivity,
great.
my,
Yep.
all
Yep.
that stuff.
Yeah.
So we don't, and that's the beauty of coaching, which I know that you know this, and let's share it out. We often don't hear what we're saying. And so within the confines of this relationship that we build with our clients, we get to be sort of that second set of ears to notice what the words are that are being said and then to mirror those back. And
Yep.
sometimes just even in the hearing of it, it's like, oh my God, I didn't even realize I was
Mm-hmm.
saying
Mm-hmm.
that. So again, it starts with awareness, surfacing that awareness. And then, it's almost like a drinking game. Every time Carla says, no judgment, curiosity, take a drink.
Yeah, yeah. I love it.
We are so quick to judge ourselves, right?
Mhm,
Like I'm a people pleaser, conflict avoider, like, so that's always been my thing. And it's so easy, like, to have the awareness and get down on yourself for all the reasons why, I couldn't have that conversation, or I was afraid to do that, bring up this very sensitive subject because I don't want to rock the boat. Right, so
mhm.
those are sort of my, we talk about those outdated rules. Those are my outdated rules that, again, I saw them as I sort of saw them as survival tactics. This is how
Mhm.
I just survive and keep my life peaceful and calm because that's definitely, again, I'll call it a value, but sometimes I wonder if it's a fear-based value or a core value. Um, so instead of beating myself up for always running away from conflict, we get curious. Why do you think?
Mhm.
Like what does creating conflict, what does that say about you? What do you take it to mean? Because we often take things to be the truth, right? The
Mm.
truth about me and the truth about my life and what's going to happen. And that's like, let's call that the truth with a little t, right? Because we've decided that's true. And with whether it's just journaling with asking yourself the big questions or working with a coach, we get to say things like, how true is that? And what
Right.
would be different if that wasn't true for you? So really just kind of not poke holes, but just create a space for curiosity and to decide, and this is the big one, to decide, especially when you are trying to figure out where you want to go next or how you want to live a more empowered, a more enjoyable life, right? I mean, life is short. Like, dare I say, like, enjoying life might be the purpose of it.
Mhm.
So, if I want to enjoy life or feel satisfied or fulfilled, is this belief supporting me in that? Or is it putting up a wall? Is it creating this invisible wall or fence, that I've decided like this is the truth, so I'm not even going to climb over that fence. How do we know? You
I
know?
love it. I love it. So several things that like I'm taking various notes here. So when you're talking about living, so this is thriving to me,
Mm,
right? This
mm,
is thriving. This is what we do here. This is the Thrive Hive. So, and I might have talked about this before. I know I've talked about it with friends. Does this support my values? I call them values or priorities
mhm,
that I specifically took the time to think about. Here is what I value now. 5 years ago for me, let's say it was growing my business, growing my business, growing my business. I grew my business. I hit all the milestones. I hit them. I didn't even know I hit them and I kept going, and this is I did a life audit a few weeks ago. This was my last podcast episode. I'm like, wait a minute. I achieved everything. I didn't know I had achieved everything I wanted to do. And in doing the life audit, what I realized was what I value now is health and wellness above everything else. I am at the time in my life where what am I doing now to support my health and wellness 5, 10, 15, 20 years from now? So when I was looking at my goals or whatever the case may be, I I looked at them through the filter of does this support these values of health, wellness, and relationships was the other one. And what was interesting to me was my business was not in that matrix at all. Or my business wasn't in that, whatever we want to call it, because the business is running itself. Now I'm worried about, or I'm focused on future me and health and wellness. My point is, you said, does this belief support me in this? So what I was thinking was, does this belief support me in my um, prioritizing health and wellness? So, for example, I don't have the time to strength train 3 days a week. Okay, this is a conversation I have with myself every week. I used to strength train all the time. I don't anymore. It is horrible. I absolutely should be doing it. I have weights right here. I got the Peloton app. There's no reason. Does this belief that I don't have the time support who I want to be or this value or these priorities? It does not. So why do I let that belief live in my head? I It's my belief. I can do whatever I want with it. I can say that's not true. That's
mm,
not true, right?
mhm,
And replace it with something else.
mhm. Yes, and there's that, like, I just, like, wrote down "should," right? And that "should" is
I hate that
so
word. Hate it.
right? It just, I mean, just the word in and of itself is
Hate.
judgment, right? It's almost,
Mhm.
it's like that self-flagellation, like,
Mhm.
I should." So there's, like, there's guilt around it, there's shame around it,
Yep. Yep.
and, I also wanted to call out that idea of values. The um, framework is a heavy word, but my sort of approach to working with clients, I've created an alliteration around the word pivot because, well, my first 20 years of my career was in PR. I can't help but
Oh, I didn't know that. I didn't know
lead.
that.
Oh yeah, lead with a story angle. So, but the P in the pivot framework is um, pinpointing and prioritizing your values,
Yeah. Oh,
right?
that's
Because that is our North Star. That's how we know what's most important to us, right?
yeah.
And so my brain is all over the place, but I'm doing this workout class right now. It's 5 days a week. And I used to joke that it was like I'm not even gonna say this out loud because it would be offensive to all the people that work with me, but it was a gym with a lot of older people in it, older women, and for me, I really have hate is a strong word, but I've never liked organized fitness, but this one works really well for me. And it's inspirational, it's personal, you're there for your own goals, no one's looking at you. And one of the trainers recently said, we were doing arms, it was a strength training day, and he's like, "You're doing this so that you're, in 20 years, you can still carry the groceries in from the car by yourself." And I'm one of those people that only wants to make one trip. So I'm carrying
Right,
like
right, right.
82
Yep.
bags on my arms at a
Yeah.
time.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's what resonated for me, right?
Mhm.
Because,
Mhm.
our, we like our values, right? Our first values are probably from our influencers, right? Our parents are, the people that laid the foundation for who we were. And sometimes those we take those values with us. They shift and change over time. They evolve because we evolve. So
Mhm.
maybe working out at one point was all about accomplishment, right? It was about getting it done, checking the
Mhm.
box, getting
Mhm.
there. But as you're evolving, as someone out there is evolving, we have to sort of take a look under the hood to see how it may be the same value, but maybe the values just shifted from the message. And so it's possible that we're disconnected from the value and what it is that we want to do. So how do we begin to look at that and reframe it
Yep.
in a way that supports us? Like, okay, I don't have the time, but I really don't want to be hunched over at Stop and Shop and not
Yeah.
able,
Yeah.
need someone to
Yep.
carry my groceries out
Yep.
for me.
Yep.
And
Yep.
that becomes, for me, that was like the motivation. I'm like, I want to be able to carry my groceries in and not worry about it. I want to be strong into my old age. And that's why I'm
Yep.
showing up to the gym
Yep.
now
Yep.
versus
Mhm.
I wasn't really into it.
I didn't feel like it. I was
Yeah.
binging on Netflix. So Thrivesters, can you hear why I wanted Carla to come on so bad? So a couple of things that you just mentioned that is the core of what we do here. So I even have a values exercise that I go through with clients, which I'm sure you do too. And I just made it up. It's, a whole bunch of values and they have to go from 100 to 10 and then from 10 to 3 or 5 or whatever. Your true north or your north star. And last week I talked about when your true north moves or it
Mm,
shifts. And that's what that really messed with me over the past month because when I did this life audit, it was always the business, the business, the business. And now it's not anymore. So, and I had to sit with it for a while because I'm like, wait, what? Like, what is even happening? And it's very cool when you come out on the other side. But this true north, your compass, you got to change it a little bit because it's going to change when you change.
100%. And what I love about what you just said is that it is hard until you get to that other side because sometimes you don't know what's going on. Right? If
Yeah,
you're not doing this
you
work
don't.
all the time, which, we're we're
Right.
we're bathing in it. But if
Yep.
you're someone that's not, it can feel so unsettling. I mean, I actually think back to what again sort of set me out on this journey of helping others to we coach what we know. The pain that I experienced when I had my career with Stella and Dot for 12 years, and
Mm-hmm.
it was it was like somehow ended up being one of the best career moves of my life. It
It's
just sort of
awesome.
embodied everything that made sense to me. Um, and then one day it didn't. Things had changed, and I always I'm having this aha moment now. I used to think things had changed with the business. And they did. There's some
Yep.
truth there that, there
Right.
were outer forces that were changing with the business that weren't quite sitting right with me. But now when I think about it, I was changing. And
Yep.
when you have aligned yourself with an identity, right? That job was who I was. It's how in my mind, it was how the whole community knew me. It was how everybody, oh, I got this necklace from you. Oh my goodness, I met you at a trunk show. All these things. So for me, I was like, what's wrong with me? Why aren't I happy here anymore?
Oh,
Like it must be me.
so good. So
And there's
good.
right, there's so much guilt there because you feel
Mm.
like you've done something wrong and that I'm not it must be that I'm just not grateful enough or um I just have to try harder. And the harder I tried to try, the more disconnected I felt, the more guilt I had because had this was my
Mhm.
income. This is how I was
Mhm.
providing and supporting
Mhm.
and I've just, I just have to forge ahead. And I was miserable. I was
Mhm.
miserable because now I can look back and realize that I was evolving and I wasn't giving myself the grace or the 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 permission to be okay with this evolution.
Mhm.
And it's like wearing a pair of shoes that you love, but that are like pinching your toes, and you can't really stand in them, but you're like, I just need to try. So yeah, that was
Yep.
a huge turning point for me. Mhm.
Oh, wow, this is wild because I've been having this conversation with so many people over the past,
Mm,
I'd say 3 or 4 months. So many people, mostly women, but so many people.
yeah.
And, what you just said was, "What's wrong with me?"
Mhm.
And Thrivesters, I wanna make sure you hear us. There is nothing wrong with you. That's it. You're changing. You're changing. That's all. You're changing. That's good. If you think
Yeah.
about it, so you were PR and
Mhm.
then mom in there, by the way, to 3 kids,
Mhm.
Stella and Dot,
Mhm.
coach,
Mm.
right? Think if we have the luxury of reinventing ourselves or changing, because really reinventing is a fancy word for changing, if you think about it.
Yeah.
Anytime we want. Anytime we want. And if you're feeling like there's something wrong with you, it's probably your indication that it's time for a change.
Mhm.
That's all. No big deal. I mean, it's easy for me to say, but it's very uncomfortable. Very
Oh,
uncomfortable.
and,
Mhm.
looking at, and this is something that, again, this is sort of one of those reframes that shifted a lot for me. So I'll share it, and sort of twofold. But one, if we just look at that, and it's the way you said it, which I think was beautiful, right? There's nothing wrong. It's information, right? This is just data. Like emotions, when you can move beyond, right, the facts versus the feelings, but like emotions, it's data. So
Mhm.
how do you take the space to just ask the simple question, like, I am feeling uncomfortable, what might be going on here, right? It could be that your values are out of alignment, and maybe even if you didn't know you had a value, that's a great way to figure out what the value is. Like,
Right. Right. Right.
something's off here.
Mhm.
And we are so quick to judge. Everyone get ready, it's time to drink. We're so quick to judge that we forget to put on like our little investigative hat, right? Let's get curious, right? What
Mhm.
else might be going on here for me? We're in the fall, right? So it's like this season of sort of, the trees are now, right, leaves are falling, and
Mhm.
settling. And I love, and I listened to your episode on, I don't know if it was doing your going back to your goals, and you were talking about, I like to do my goals at my birthday because that's a whole new
Yeah.
year,
Yep.
right? And we all think about goal setting from, oh, January 1, it's a fresh new year. And I like this idea of seasonality, because
Mhm.
when we
Love it.
look at the seasons, right? The seasons give us a very natural rhythm for growth and change. And we don't judge it. I mean, I don't love the winter, but I know it has to, the winter has to happen so that the
Right.
spring can happen,
Right.
right? And
Right.
so, you know, we're biological creatures. Like it would be weird if we didn't change. Our bodies certainly change, right? Like we can't avoid that. So if our bodies are changing, it makes sense that like our attitudes are changing,
Yep.
or our desires are changing, or what we want now. And we never give ourselves that, um, I'll use the word grace again. We very rarely give ourselves that space and grace to say, oh, you know what? Like, wow, I'm evolving. And to
Mhm.
welcome it, we like run away from change, because changes can be, you can perceive it
Mhm.
as scary. You can perceive it as difficult, which again, how many people have I heard say, I'm not good with change? Because change is, our brains love predictability. Our
Yep.
brains want to know what comes next. That's evolutionary.
Mhm.
And so change can be viewed as a threat, or change can be viewed as possibility. And which one supports you? Which one doesn't?
And we get to choose.
Right?
So tell me when you decided that, or when you figured out that you were changing, and
Mm.
this wonderful 12 years of success and family and community that you had, what was it? How did you come to that realization that, oh, this is time for a change?
I mean, I would love to say that it was, just this big, wonderful aha moment that happened for me and out in a walk. But no, I
Yeah.
actually, I stayed at the party a lot longer than I should.
Yep.
I really
Well, we all
did.
do. We all
Yeah,
do.
yeah.
Yep. Yep.
Um,
Yep.
and it was, I I like to say that midlife isn't a crisis, just that it's an opportunity, but I do joke that this was my midlife crisis.
Mhm.
I was at the point where I was miserable and just sort of waking up crying. And
Mm.
so I engaged a coach. I and here's the interesting thing, and I always remember this. A lot of my coworkers, leaders at Stella and Dot, called the one percenters, team leaders doing really well. They were all working with coaches and
Mhm.
talk about limiting beliefs. And, I was like, oh, I'm not there. Like in my mind, coaches were for other people, right?
Huh.
They were for executives, they were for really powerful leaders. They were for celebrities. And this was going on close to 10 years ago. The coaching industry had sort of blossomed.
Mhm.
Um, but I had sort of put up a wall that I wasn't worth paying money for
Mm.
myself.
Mhm.
Um, and and I always remember that because I do think that can be a huge, huge block for people, right?
Yep.
We would spend, right, I'll speak as a parent, like as a parent, we would spend anything on our children. We would figure out a way to get the money to send them to camp or get them new sneakers or whatnot.
Right.
We would invest in them because, right, investing in
That's what you do.
ourselves.
They're your kids. Yep. Yep.
But investing in myself, oh,
Yep.
no, no,
Yep.
no, 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 no. I don't need that. I can figure this out on my own. I should, there's that word again. I should be able to figure this out on my own. Well, I
Mhm.
had hit a wall and I couldn't figure it out on my own. And,
Mhm.
I have a very supportive mother and I have an incredibly supportive husband, but that's different. They are there. They want to protect you. They're going to
Mhm.
kind of mirror, tell you what their fears are and project
Right.
those
Right.
onto you.
Right. Yeah.
So I finally,
Yep.
I hired a coach and it was like I always say it was like I just kind of almost needed just one session
Mhm.
because she listened to me and I just let it all out. And I said, like, how can I leave this job? I am. I think I said I am Stella and Dot. That's how everybody knows me. That's how and she just called BS on me.
Good. Good.
She
I
just
had so sorry, did you want to finish that?
no, 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 no. I mean, it was one of those big moments where, and she should have trademarked it because I use it all the time. It was just the vessel. It was
Mm.
just the vessel. And she's like, you poured into that vessel. And guess what? You can take that and pour it into something else. And it was like,
Exactly.
the
Exactly.
angels
Yep.
sang, the skies
Yep.
opened up. And
Yep.
it wasn't that easy, but that certainly was a big starting point for me.
Yep. It's so funny you mentioned the coach because as we were talking about how I did my life audit and my values changing, I was going to say, had I hired a coach, I would have been through that like that, like that, like. And when you're talking about the woman that I'm assuming it was a woman, yeah, you said she that you hired. When I was with Marriott, I was with Marriott for 25 years, and 25 years is a long time to be with the same company, and it was my life. It was over half my life at the time. She said to me one day, "It's not a divorce, it's a graduation." And that totally, this was, I don't know, 15, 20 years ago. And it's still with me. That was such a game changer for me because I felt shame or guilt, like, well, how can I leave? How can I leave? It's not a divorce. You're graduating. Go on and do something else. And it was almost right after I heard that, I'm like, okay, it's okay. And then I started making plans for what was next. And they can just the person that you work with helps you see what you can't see. It doesn't matter who you are. Doesn't matter who you
Mm,
are. There's stuff you
mm,
can't see.
I just wrote that down in big
Mm.
letters. Right?
Yeah,
Trademark
Marla,
it.
I talk about her all the time. She was great. Or she is
That's
great.
amazing. Yeah.
And the other thing I was going to say when we were talking, you were talking about, I think it was before I was talking, I can't remember what you were talking about. And I remember thinking to myself, so the fastest way to burn yourself out is to continue to have those feelings of what's wrong with me
Mm,
and why aren't I happy? or happier, or, why am I not fulfilled? I have all this beautiful, whatever it may be. The fastest way to burn you out is to keep doing it. And
Mhm.
sometimes that burnout can be significant and can really hurt you and the people around you. So it's not a luxury to figure out what's going on. You have to figure out what's going on.
Yeah, 100%. And it goes back to energy, right?
Mhm.
Because, how you show up in one area of your life, there's spillage, right? If you are
Of course.
miserable, right,
Mhm.
in your profession, it's inevitable that that is going to spill over into your personal life, the way that you respond to people around you, because you are, in effect, in a constant state of stress. And bringing it all back to awareness, when we are under stress, what are the stories that we're telling ourselves? How are we perceiving what's happening to us, right? I always love that one. Someone might want to throw
Yeah,
something at the
that's
screen,
interesting.
but
You mentioned that earlier. I wrote it down. It was not how are we reacting, how are we perceiving what's happening?
mhm.
Perceive and then respond. That was it.
Yeah, yeah, because right,
Interesting.
you use the word lens, and I love that because when I talk about energy, I often use the analogy of if you and I were both in a very modern, stark showroom that was all the white walls were all white, and I handed you a pair of glasses that had pink lenses, and I grabbed a pair of glasses and they had blue lenses. If someone asked us what color room are we in, you're saying pink and I'm saying blue. And that is because the unique lens that we wear is coloring how we see the world.
Mhm,
And so
mhm.
that's very literal. But when you think about our lens as humans, right, our lens was most of them were fashioned when we were little. The beliefs that were handed down to us,
Mhm.
all of the experiences that we have, they're all kind of stored up here. And we're sort of, when we're in our default setting, we're operating on, I go back to the idea of the factory settings. And so if, I'm trying to think of a good example. My one of the things that was passed on to me from my mama was, you catch more flies with honey, right? Catch more flies with honey. So be polite, always smile, always, be respectful.
Mhm.
And right, so that's not untrue, but and I'm not someone who is as I said, I'm not someone who's comfortable in conflict. So what if I look at my own energy leadership index results under stress, for me, what's so fascinating and also so incredibly accurate is under stress, my first response is victim. Oh my gosh, why is this happening to me?
Oh,
I
interesting.
I jump over anger. Most people are, 1, 2. If we look at this energy levels 1 through 7. Most individuals that I've done evaluations for, assessments for, have heavy 1 and 2. They go from victim to anger pretty quickly. I literally jump over anger and I go
Mm,
right to number 3. The level 3 energy is toleration and responsibility. So I go right to how can I fix this so that I can move
mhm,
forward? And if
mhm,
you can move forward too, that's great. But I just need to we got to get this going. So
mhm.
that's what I know about myself. And my car is in the shop. I brought my car into the shop 2 weeks ago.
Ugh.
And the response from the dealership is slow at best. And I am slowly but surely getting more and more frustrated. And I was actually talking to my mother about this yesterday because she was in a similar situation. And I was like, listen, mom, I know you catch more flies with honey and all of that. But guess what? Sometimes you need to tap into the anger
Mhm,
because, you know, to get what you want, right?
mhm,
And if
mhm.
I'm not getting the response that I need to move forward with certainty to understand when I'm getting my car back, then
Mhm.
as uncomfortable as it is for me, I had to dig deep and have a phone call yesterday where, and granted, I'm not screaming. I am still
Right,
somewhere in
right,
my
right.
space of
Yeah.
calm, but it wasn't like, just let me know. I was like, listen, I'm in sales, I'm in service. And I know that number one thing is you need to serve. And here's
Right,
what service
right.
means. Like, you've got to keep me informed so that I'm not sitting in uncertainty
Yeah.
and making stories up that you've
Mhm.
crashed my car, that
Mhm.
you forgot about me. Like those are the
Mhm.
stories that I'm now making up because you're not giving me information. Well,
Yep.
I'd just like to report that I got an immediate call at the end of the day with an update telling me what's
Mhm.
going on with my car and
Mhm.
letting me know when I will be hearing from them next. So,
Mhm.
just a proof point that sometimes, right, we have to make different choices that
Yep.
support the
Yep.
outcome that we
Yep.
want. That was answering something about beliefs and
No,
whatnot.
it was, your perception about what's happening,
Right,
perception,
right.
and then
Your choices, how you
perceiving the yeah,
respond,
yeah,
right.
yeah.
And again, like old Carla, right, would just, I don't want to create conflicts. I'm just gonna wait and hear, like, oh, it'll make me uncomfortable. Like that's just sort of my defaults, right? And I
Mhm.
know that about myself now. So go back to, what do I want the outcome to be? And what are the
Mhm.
choices that I have to make?
Mhm.
And which one do I want to choose? So responding versus reacting.
That's the thing, you get to choose. You get to
Mhm.
choose. I love that. I love that.
Very powerful. Yeah.
We have so much more to talk about, and unfortunately, we have 3 minutes.
Okay.
So I
We'll do
want
this
well,
again.
I mean, I can keep going, but you you have something else. Um, so where can people find you? How do people work with you? All those things.
So I'm incredibly creative. You can find me with my name. So I
I love
have
it.
a website which is simply carlagreengrass.com. I am on
Carla with a
Instagram,
C. Sorry,
Carla with a
Carla with a
C.
C.
Thank
Yep.
you. Yeah, green
Yep.
grass like the green grass grows. And on Instagram as well, Carla Greengrass.
I'm looking
Um,
at it right now.
yeah, I have actually been that has been a goal of mine this year to show up more, sharing stories and connecting with people on Instagram. So right now I'm doing a series which is called the Pocket-Sized Pivot, which are tiny little strategies that you
Love,
can incorporate, pull it out, right?
love,
Pull it out of your
love,
pocket when you've got a
love.
shift in the moment. And that again, that's sort of the power, right? The power of being able to make choices in the moment that can shift your day, right? That's the power of choice. So, anywho, I work with individuals one on one in the coaching in the coaching setting, and purposeful pivots are my bread and butter
Your
because,
jam.
as we know, change is going to happen. It's inevitable, but you don't have to suffer through it. That's not a given. So that is a very safe space for navigating change and figuring out what comes next for you. And the Energy Leadership Index assessment is part
Yep.
of a smaller package that I have. If an individual isn't ready for like full on one-on-one coaching, the Mindset Reset is an incredible place to start. It
Great.
is the assessment, the Energy Leadership Index assessment. We do a 90-minute debrief, and I'll be honest, it usually ends
Mm,
up at 2 hours because I
I'm
get
sure.
very
Yep.
excited about what we can uncover. And then there's a 30-minute follow-up to see how you've been
Love it.
implementing your new awareness. So that's a great way to sample, to have a sip of working with me as your coach.
I love it. I love it. And we'll link to all those things in the show notes. I'm going to ask you, I'm going to close out with a question I ask everyone who comes on. First of all, thank you for coming.
This was so fun.
Um, there were so many things I wanted to ask you about kids growing up together. Unfortunately, my fault. I was late. We didn't get to it. We'll have you back. What does it mean to you to build a life where you thrive?
Mm. Thriving to me is embracing the power of choice that we
Mm,
have in every single moment to make a choice that supports how you want to feel in every moment and how you want to think about what's happening, right? What's happening for you instead of to you. Because when you embrace that, you are embracing agency and self determination, knowing that you are in the driver's seat,
mhm.
that you do get to choose. And I hope it doesn't sound like an oversimplification, but you do get to choose
Hmm.
how you want to feel and how you want to respond in every moment. So to me, that was the truly the proverbial key that unlocked so much freedom for me and so much possibility and so much less stress. And in life where we are surrounded by so much stress, knowing that you have some control over the stress that you're feeling is liberating. So that's thriving.
Love it. Thrivesters, we're going to end on that note. If this episode resonated with you, please screenshot it, send it to a friend. I'm going to link all the information to Carla and all of her information. We will have Carla back. Maybe we'll dive down a little bit into what we used to do as kids, some of those
Oof, memory lane.
shenanigans.
Love it.
And until then, go out there and thrive like you mean it.